Hey, this is Owen. If you're comfortable, leave your first name and state at the sound of the tiny truck backing up.
My name is Cloud, and I'm from Ohio. So basically, I was wondering, if you ever think the Jehovah's Witnesses will turn into a death cult, because I was on, I believe, Lloyd Evans' channel. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, and it said the Jehovah's Witnesses believe the world will end before the end of the year. Do you think this could possibly lead them to a Heaven's Gate or Jonestown situation? It's very worrying to me. Also, how's Manhattan? And I hope you have an amazing night, hun. Bye.
There was a poll forever ago. I don't remember. It's been like a year or two. The poll basically was, would you take a pill provided by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses if they asked you to? And I don't remember what the results were. And it was not an official poll. You have to take it with a grain of salt, but is that the saying? With a grain of salt or a grain of sand? Whatever. Anyway, you have to be careful. You can't take it too seriously. That's the point. But the number was non-zero. It was reasonably high, if I remember correctly. I feel like it was around the 50s or the 60s who said, yes, I would. That should be concerning to everybody. Now, here's the thing about Jehovah's Witnesses. They have been predicting the end would be here any 5 minutes now for 100, 125, 150 years. This is not new, but they keep getting more and more urgent, if that's even possible. They predicted the end would come in like 1874 or something like that, and then again in the early 1900s, again in 1913, 1914, again in 1922, 1925. I mean, they just kept doing these predictions over and over again. And they finally did another prediction in 1975. This is like their 50th failed prediction, right? And they were sure. They stopped saying the end is near and started saying the end is here. They even had a catchphrase, stay alive to 75. And it was like a branding thing. You know, if you're in your hospital bed, if you're on your deathbed, just make it one more day, one more week, one more year. Just have to make it to 1975. And that kind of bit them in the ass because, you know, obviously nothing happened when that time came. So they stopped, the society, the governing body, stopped making overt predictions like that. But they'd drop hints. The circuit overseers, the leadership, the governing body, they'd drop little hints every now and then. They would hint that, you know, the end, we wouldn't even see the year 2000. They'd hint there's no point in going to college, no point in trying to better your life in any way, because we're not even going to make it to the year 2000. There's no point. Nobody in the Jehovah's Witness religion believed that we would see the year 2000. So here we are, the year 2020, 2021, 2022, and they're getting more and more urgent. Again, they keep making these predictions. And they made this newer prediction called the second generation teaching. Jehovah's Witnesses have always taught that the end would come before the generation who was alive and baptized and anointed during the events of 1914. The end would come before they died. That's the generational teaching, basically. I don't know its official name. We're over 100 years past 1914 now. So when that didn't happen, they had to come up with the second generation teaching, which is anybody who was alive during the lifetimes of anybody who was alive during the events of 1914. That's when the end will come. By artificially extending it like that, they give themselves roughly 15 to 20 years from now. Something has to happen in the next 15 to 20 years, or they're going to have to revise their claim again. So, yeah, they keep digging themselves a hole and making things uglier and uglier for themselves, basically. It keeps getting more and more urgent, and they're more and more convinced every day that the end is right around the corner. So that's where Jehovah's Witnesses sit right now.
Hi, Owen. This is Daniel from California. I have a question. As an atheist, how do you go about getting a girlfriend? How did you manage to get a girlfriend as an atheist? Because that's really hard. I recently had an account on blackpeoplemeet.com, and I basically got rid of it because it wasn't working out. I believe in being honest, and I told the women that I was an atheist, and they basically rejected me because of that. And also in Christian religions, they believe that you should not be unequally yoked with a non-believer. So I'm wondering about that, because you mentioned several times you have a girlfriend. How did you manage to get a girlfriend as an atheist, and how do you find atheist women? I really like your channel. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Good question. How do you find a girlfriend as an atheist? Because atheists are, a very small segment of the population. I found my girlfriend online, actually. I found her through the internet, and that's one of the only ways left, really, for atheists to meet. But let me give you some figures here. These figures may be outdated, so you're going to want to double-check them on your own. I believe, last I checked, 6% of the U.S. population self-identifies as atheists. They do not believe in God, right? And then 30-something%, or maybe 27% or something like that, put themselves in the none category, no religion, right? So they don't have any strong opinions on religion, basically. And then the rest identify as soft Christian. I'm guessing, this is an educated guess, but I think around 40% of the U.S. identifies as hard Christian, like it's a core piece of who they are. It's a core piece of their identity. And then 25 to 30% are religious extremists. That's roughly my estimate, right? There's a good subset of the population who is willing to talk to you no matter what. If they're a soft Christian, or even if they identify as none, I would say that's acceptable. Like, you don't have to jump in with both feet and say, I'm an atheist. You can just kind of slowly work your way into it. I know it's a core piece of who I am, my identity, but I take it slow usually when I'm introducing myself to people and stuff. I kind of gauge their feelings about the subject and let yourself make the decision. If they aren't okay with this kind of thing, if they aren't okay with atheism or something, then you don't have to be with them. Don't put it on them and let them make the decision. You make the decision. I would recommend that. I mean, I don't know how much use that advice is to you, but who knows? Maybe give it a shot and see how it goes.
Hey, Owen, this is Hannah from New York. I just had a question about the Jehovah's Witnesses and their use of technology. So I've seen in some of the recent propaganda videos that they publish, all of the Jehovah's Witnesses using like iPads, iPhones, tablets, stuff like that. So my question is, who pays for that? Is it the Watchtower Society providing this to the witnesses, or do the Jehovah's Witnesses have to provide these things for themselves? So say I'm working at the grocery store, do I have to use my own money to purchase these kind of things if I were Jehovah's Witness? Thanks. Bye.
The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, the group that is the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses, basically, that started out as a printing press. It was created by Charles Taze Russell and some guy named Barber, I think. I forget now. Anyways, when they started it, they called themselves Bible students, right? And they started this corporation called the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And its whole goal was to print Bibles and print the Watchtower magazine, their study notes on the Bible or whatever. Eventually, there was a hostile takeover of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, the corporation. There was a hostile takeover of it. It's an interesting story, but anyway, that's not the story I'm here to tell. As time went on, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, as a printing press, as a printing company, became less and less useful. Obviously, because now we're in the year like 2021, 2022, 2023. Digital media is taking over more and more as time goes on. So the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society has had to shift its usefulness to digital media productions. So they're actually ceasing production on things like the Awake magazine. They're no longer printing it, from my understanding. That's brand new news. But they're still writing it and releasing it to like iPads, and their JW app, basically, is where they're releasing it. and their members are still downloading it and reading it. So they have created these big media centers where they have software engineers who write and keep their apps up to date. They have a segment where they have writers who write new books and write new magazines, and they release all this stuff onto their apps. To answer your question more directly, who pays for it? The Jehovah's Witnesses pay for it, like the people, directly. The members, each member has to buy their own stuff. And if they can't afford an iPad or whatever, for the most part, typically, they can still get a printed version of the Watchtower or whatever else, if it's requested at the very least. But they're really pushing people to go digital now, interestingly enough. I had a couple of questions from listeners I wanted to hit. These are big topics, so I'm not going to spend too long on them. I just wanted to hit a couple of these questions because they're relevant, important news stories happening right now that relate to what I'm doing. What do you think of Richard Dawkins' comments about Down syndrome? Now, I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, but Richard Dawkins, if you don't know who this guy is, he's a famous atheist. He's a biologist, and he's written lots of books. He's probably the most famous atheist in the world, I would be willing to say. Very big deal, this guy. In 2014, somebody tweeted at Richard Dawkins and said, "I honestly don't know what I would do if I were pregnant with a kid with Down syndrome. Real ethical dilemma." And Richard Dawkins responded, "Abort it and try again. It would be immoral to bring it into the world if you have the choice." This was a pretty contentious, questionable thing that Richard Dawkins said, and a lot of people have been talking about it in my community. So I wanted to just touch on it for a minute and let you guys know what I think. I don't think that there's anything wrong with abortion, generally speaking. It's just a clump of like 150 cells. You know, it's no different than scratching your nose. You kill more cells doing that than getting an abortion in most cases. Up to 10 weeks, I think the fetus is about the size of a strawberry. So you're killing a little bit more than the cells that you scratch off of your nose, but it's still not sentient. It's not human by any stretch of the imagination. It is just a grouping of cells at that point. It's a large grouping, but it's just a grouping of cells. There's no brain stem, no nothing to speak of yet. So when Richard Dawkins says abort it and try again, for the most part, I don't think I have a problem with abortion in any context at all. That being said, I don't like Richard Dawkins for other reasons. I think the guy is kind of a scumbag and has really made the atheist community look bad. I feel that I'm going to have to think about this subject a little bit more if I think it's wrong to specifically abort if Down syndrome is an issue. I don't know. I haven't really put that much. Well, I've put a lot of thought into it, but I haven't come to a conclusion. But I have plenty of other reasons to hate the guy. So, you know, I don't need to add that one to the list right now. I'm just going to mull it over what he said and the idea that he proposed before I hate him for that too. What do you think of the Israel-Palestine conflict? This is an extremely contentious issue, and I don't want to get into it too much either, just like the other one, but I will say, generally speaking, I stand with human rights, which by default means I stand with Palestine at the moment. Yes, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Yes, they've done terrible things. Yes, they've stored missiles in United Nations schools next to children. Yes, they've done all that shit. But Israel is the power in that area right now. They have all the cards, and they have the world's support. And with that status, they need to be more responsible about what they're doing. They need to have compassion and approach things in a calmer manner and seek out peace. Actually seek out peace. I hold them responsible for what's happening right now because they hold all the cards. And not to mention the fact that Israel has powerful weapons, powerful bombs, powerful missiles, and powerful anti-missile defense systems. And Hamas is shooting off these little homemade things stuck together with chewing gum and paper clips. Israel holds all of the power here. What they're doing is wrong. What they have done up to now has not respected human rights, and I don't want to see this go any further. We need to get the far-right extremists out of government in Israel. If we could get the far-right extremists like Netanyahu out of government in Israel, things would be much more peaceful, I hope. And I would like to go back to the 1967 borders and sanction Israel if they break that agreement. If they try to go out and capture settlements and capture land outside of the 1967 borders, then they should be sanctioned. I'm willing to hear arguments for either side, but that's my take on it right now. I feel like Israel is abusing their position and their power in disgusting ways, and they are not respecting human rights. That's just a fact. And saying they did it too or they did it first, that's not an excuse. That's not okay. You can't just excuse your disgusting, abhorrent behavior by saying they did it too.